All right, Shalom. First off, I want to start off by saying all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Once again, it is all praises to the world calls God and Jesus Christ, the two names in the Hebrew. Is Yahweh for the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Shai for his beloved Son. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and mercy to the hopeful elect, preaching this word in truth and sincerity on the brother Tazabah in Great Millstone, Arizona camp. Lord will with another video to edify. I want to go on this article, man, because this is a. I'm gonna read this whole article, man. This is a juicy article, man. And all these events that are spoken of in this are happening right now. So it's an evident identifier of the scripture. Let me grab it. That states this. It's Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes 1. Salakia. Ecclesiastes 1-9. It says, the thing that had been, which is talking about the past, is that which shall be. That which shall be is the future or the present. And that which is done is that which shall be done. So that what happened in the past is going to happen again, right? It says, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? So the times we're in is no different from the stuff that happened before. It had been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come hereafter. So the things that happened in the past with those spirits that come back, they're not going to remember that this stuff happened and that they were the ones that inflicted it. But I'm going to go into this article, man, and you have to understand the reason why the Lord keeps this stuff coming in a cycle is because the Lord knows a 100% infallible way to break down any kingdom, any society, to bring judgment, and he doesn't have to change it because he made his system to break down anything and put out judgment to anyone or any nation so perfect that he can just set it in motion, man. So peep this, it says lynching, stoning, and burning. The 1919 Red Summer race riots that America and Britain want you to forget, which echo today. And bro, this article, and like I said, this is something that they want you to forget. This is something that a nation tries to forget because what did the scripture say? Let me get it. This is Habakkuk 2:16. Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of Yahweh's right hand shall be turned unto thee. And this is talking to Edom. And shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. So in the time of 2020, when America's supposed to be this innovative country and have all this greatness that came out of it, here it is, their wickedness throughout generations is rearing its head right back into front and center. So shameful spewing, that shameful past that America's had, and these Edomites in general has had, is right back in front and center. This is Job 20, and I'll start at 9. It says, the eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him. It says his children shall seek to please the poor. And that's what we're seeing now. Trying to tear down these statues. You got Edomites walking all in the so-called Black Lives Matter marches, which that all was set up by Edomite himself, George Soros, and he fought. And who do they have at the helm of that Black Lives Matter stuff? You got two or three Jake females that are the leaders of it, and they're all dykes, all homosexuals. So that's supposed to be your leaders, right? This is why we tell brothers don't be entangled with the affairs of this life, man. You let these niggas that walk in the congregation of the dead push forth that vibration. You don't need to do it. We have a power that's going to fight for us. But nonetheless, this devil's shameful past is catching up with him. So verse 11, it says his bones, Job 20:11, his bones are full of the sins of his youth, which shall lie down with him in the dust. And this is the bones that are full of the sins of the youth. This history of this shameful ass murderous demon. Peep this picture, right? Bunch of Edomite kids. Look, you got grandma, wicked ass auntie. You got all these little devils over here, man. You know, when you understand what this picture is talking about, you'll understand when the scriptures sit there and say, "Happy shall he be that reward thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that take thy little ones, which are the kids, and dasheth them against the stones, because they grow up being devils and demons from birth." It says his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him. As soon as he be born, he go about speaking lies, man. And look, this is the picture, right? All these Edomites got bashed out windows, smoke. There was obviously a burning that happened. And what the caption says, white children cheer outside of an African American residence that they have set on fire. And look at all these little demonish ass Edomite kids, man. Demons, bro. You know? And the Lord is going to put it back in our spirits in the kingdom to know every single little bit that these devils did. That's why the scriptures tell you we shall do according to the Lord's anger in that day, because he's going to give us remembrance of everything from every lifetime we've lived, what these devils did to us. So peep this article. It says in 1919, hundreds of people were murdered in race riots across the US and the UK. It says men, women, and children were butchered. So why is a footstone in history? It says, so why is it a footstone in history? Because media and governments do not want you to know how they reacted. It says, warning, the following article contains images that may be disturbing to some readers. Now peep this. They got to give you a disclaimer before they tell you about the violent history this so-called white man has had on you tribes, man. It says, remember when we thought 2020 was going to be a year of coronavirus? Then along came the murder of George Floyd, which could have been a psyops. It could have been true. Who knows? It says in the subsequent protests, violent arrests and clashes between police, the far right, and anti-fascists, COVID-19 is going to have to share top billing. It says, remember too, how everyone compared the virus to the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918 and 1919. It says, and yet few people compared the protests and violence to another event from that time, Red Summer. That's because these bloody and shameful few months in 1919 aren't the kind of history that countries want to teach their kids. And we just reviewed that, man. His bones are going to be full of the sins of his youth. And look, this is the youth. These are the youth right here. Bones full of sins of his youth. And the bones being full of the sins of the youth year is when his rise started. It says Red Summer saw hundreds of people killed in a series of race riots across the U.S. Most deaths were Salakia. All right, Salakia, I had to take that. So starting again, it says Red Summer saw hundreds of people killed in a series of race riots across the U.S. Most deaths were white on black, including people being lynched, stoned to death, and burned at the stakes. But it was also the first time the black population had resisted the violence, and it's happening again. And it wasn't the first time that you've resisted the violence, but this is all happening again. Look what Jake is out there doing. Jake fighting back with the cops and shit, right? It says both peaceful and with force. But while the words and images of such medieval savagery chill the blood, the levels of cruelty astound a 21st century sensibility. There are parallels with 2020. Now, let me get this, man. This is Amos 1:11. It says, "Thus said Yahweh, for three transgressions of Edom, and for four." Now, I talked about the savagery and the medieval savagery and the chill, savagery chilled the blood. Right? It talked about how gruesome it was. It says, "Thus said Amos 1:11 in the scriptures. Thus said Yahweh, for three transgressions of Edom, and for four, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. But I will send fire upon Teman, which shall devour the places of Bozrah." You see, and that's what's going to happen, man. These Edomites shed off all pity and perpetually tore you niggas up. And they'll sit there and say Red Summer only dealt with with Judah, the so-called Negroes. But really, man, Red Summer was the whole tribes, man. Everybody was catching hell. It says Judah and Ephraim were oppressed together. You know? So it says, reading on an article, it says, "So what fueled it, and why has it been brushed under the carpet of history? The U.S. at the time was a deeply racially divided country led by President Woodrow Wilson, a supporter of the Ku Klux Klan, who was against black suffrage and actually resegregated elements of American society. And what does Donald Trump do? Make America great again, right? He's giving these Edomites that newfound pride again. You know, this is what's happening. You see this. You got Becky's Karen's popping up everywhere, right? This is that new divide. This is that same divide. It says white-led race riots and lynchings were commonplace from 1889 to 1918. More than 3,000 were lynched, 2,472 of whom were black men, and 50 black women, black people, despite emancipation 57 years earlier, which it was just a changing of, when you go into that word emancipation, it just means that the changing of hands. So it was just the changing of the ownership of the slave from a private owned sector to an industrial state owned sector. It said, despite emancipation 57 years earlier, had fewer rights than white people. But what lit the touch paper for the bloodshed in 1919, and what made it so significant was the return of the soldiers from World War I. It says, armed, angry, and ready to fight. These soldiers, both white and black, were demobilized at a time of already rising racial tensions and economic difficulty. And that's what we're seeing now, right? That's what we're seeing now. Rising racial tension and economic difficulty. Everything's shutting down. These are the same events. The same things are happening. It says they were trained to fight, and in many cases were suffering from shell shock, nowadays known as PTSD. Violence flared easily. It says white servicemen on fabricated rumors of white women began being assaulted by Negro friends, rumors sensationalized by the press, and went on random sprees of assault and murder. Now, let me get this. This is Psalms 58 and 3. It says, "The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies." Right? White women fabricating stories saying that a nigga touched them. It was sensationalized in the media, and niggas went on a spree, right? It says the Washington Post, one of the top newspapers in America, still to this day, the Washington Post, that famously liberal rag, even ran a front page story organizing white servicemen to gather at a certain location so they could attack black people in the city in the city in mass. You see this? These are these devils, bro. These are these Edomites. This is why the scriptures call them the son of perdition. Let me get it. And this is Second Thessalonians 2:3. It says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there be a falling away first," which was in 70 A.D., which was when Israel lost their heritage. They were cast out into the earth, and then shortly after that, Jake was torn down by these Edomites, shipped everywhere, and our heritage was beaten out of us. That was the time where there was a falling away. It says, "Except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition." And this is Esau, Edom, so-called white men. This is the characteristics of the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalted himself above all that is called the Most High. So who does that through his laws? The Lord said you're not supposed to be a homosexual. You're supposed to put, according to the Bible, it says anybody who's a homosexual, there's a judgment for it. And what does the so-called white men do? He makes up laws to promote homosexuals in the land. The scriptures tell you you're not supposed to change your sex. And what does the so-called white man do? He gives you hormone replacement therapy. The scriptures say you're not supposed to have idols. And what does he do? This is the land of the free. Everybody can worship any god they like. Right? So this is the characteristics of the son of perdition. Remember this: who opposeth and exalted himself above all that is called the Most High, or that is worshipped, so that he, as the Most High, sitteth in the temple of the Most High, showing himself that he is the Most High. And this is what the so-called white man does. He painted himself up as being Yahushai, who the world only calls Jesus Christ, who we know his image is spoken of in the book of Revelation. It tells you how he looked. It tells you throughout the scriptures of the tribe that he came from were blackened to the ground. Solomon himself, who was the son of David, that was the wisest man in the world, said that he's black and comely. But somehow the Lord that came from that same line looks like an Edomite when these so-called white people get their hand on the scriptures, right? This is that devil. That's the son of perdition. So it says white servicemen had also come home to cities with few available jobs and homes, an economy ravaged by war, and a pandemic, and an influx of black voters in the South due to war-related labor shortages. And by 1919, in the first wave of the Great Migration, an estimated 500,000 African Americans, which were Israelites, not African Americans, you're neither, had moved to the industrial cities of the Northeast and Midwest. Between 1910 and 1920, the black population in Chicago grew by 148%, and in Philadelphia by 500%. Alongside the economic effects, white people blamed these black migrants for spreading Spanish flu, a foreshadowing perhaps of those just waiting to blame the spike of COVID-19 infections on Black Lives Matter rallies. And it's not going to be on the rally itself. It's not going to be on the organization itself. They're going to reduce it straight to this term: Black lives, you Israelites. That's what they're going to blame the spread of this so-called COVID-19. They're going to blame you as a source of infection. They're going to blame you for their economy failing. They're going to blame you. And this is the same stuff. It's happening all in procession once again, man. Once again. Peep this. I'm going to keep reading this article. It's juicy, bro. It says some black migrants propose creating a new black middle class. You see? What do they talk about? We gotta focus on days where we don't buy anything. We gotta focus on creating black wealth, make a new Black Wall Street. That shit's happened and they didn't work. Let me get this cover. Yeah, this is Isaiah 30:1. It says, "Woe to the rebellious children," said Yahweh, "that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with the covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin." And that's what our people do. Instead of sitting there saying, you know what, let's turn to the Lord. This is how we fix our situation, is turning to the Lord. What do? What do our people do? They sit there and think that they can stop buying stuff and it's going to hurt the so-called white man. They think they can start making their own money within this damn devil's economic system and that it's going to work. That's taking a covering but not of the Lord's Spirit. So the Lord said, woe to those rebellious children. It says, verse 2, that walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. What do? What does Jay do? You got to go vote. You're trying to strengthen yourself in the strength of Egypt, man. In the land of your oppressors, you think you're going to be able to vote and make some fucking change? It says, verse 3, it says, therefore shall the strength of Egypt be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. And that's what's happening, man. Jake is still getting shot down in the streets, and they think their vote matters. It says, some black migrants propose creating a new black middle class. These both enraged and frightened people who frightened people used to white privilege, and it says that was off the charts compared to today, and it's still the same. It has not changed. The only difference now is there's media and a sway of opinion. It says black soldiers return to different set of ear inducing issues. It says they came home from risking their lives for their country to discover that their country and its president did not see them as a complete human being. At least 13 black veterans were lynched after the war. Uh, they weren't war heroes; they were second-class citizens, but they were also motivated and emboldened. You see, it says "Red Summer," a phrase coined by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored Peoples (NAACP), filed Secretary uh, filed Secretary James Weldon Johnson, referring to the bloodshed as was a series of events. Let me see if I can get this. I think this is it. Yeah, this is it. I'm gonna keep reading on this. It says referring to the bloodshed was a series of events. The most serious of these began in April and ended in November. In that time, across dozens of American cities, white mobs, including women and children, rampaged, destroying black properties and churches and murdering black people. Peep this. This is Isaiah 35:5. It says, because thou hast had, you know what? I might have to start up. I'll start as Isaiah 35:1. It says, moreover, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it, and say unto it, thus said Yahweh power, and Mount Seir is a chief dwelling place of Esau, Edom, the so-called white men, right? It says, and say unto it, thus said Yahweh power, behold, O Mount Seir, you Edomites, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate. And thou shalt know that I am Yahweh, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children by the force of the sword, in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. And when these niggas went out there and tried to fucking fight for this country, you Edomites came out and just started slaughtering when they came back home. This is what this is talking about, man. And furthermore, you damn devils think you can get away with this stuff, man. The Lord is taking note. The scriptures tell you the Lord requires that which is past. You know, so peep this. And you know the funny thing about it, man, too, is these devils, right? All these Karens that go on YouTube, make all these videos on social media, sitting there saying, "I don't give a fuck about Black Lives," which, you know what? Fuck Black Lives Matter movement too, man. Them niggas ain't shit. You calling yourself black in this day and age when the word of the Lord is going out, instead of calling yourself an Israelite, man, you deserve what comes to you. But at the end of the day, you know, these Karens, all these racist ass Edomites that go on social media sitting there saying those type of things, they're gearing up to do exactly the same shit that they said they had no part in. Because those are those same spirits back in the flesh today, man. It says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of the calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, said Yahweh, power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. And that's what you're going to see, man. This is what it was talking about. Due to the bloodshed, they called it the Red Summer, right? And I'm going to keep reading on this article. It says, the Ku Klux Klan had a resurgency after decades of slumber, committing 64 lynchings in 1918 and 83 in 1919. It says, in one of the deadliest events, more than 200 Black Americans, Israelites, all sexes and ages, were massacred in Ellen, Arkansas, after Black sharecroppers campaigned for better working conditions. This is the same shit that's happening, bro. It says many of the attacks were focused on those Black veterans who numbered around 380,000 and were seen as a threat to white supremacy and power. They had fought for their country, so they shouldn't so why shouldn't they be treated the same as everyone else? Because you're Jake and you're here for your punishment, not for you to be on the same fucking level, man. You simple ass Negroes need to get that through your fucking skulls, man. You're not here to be on the same level as Esau, man. You're here for a punishment. Ain't nobody going to fucking jail sitting there thinking that they're there for a good time. It says my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. The scriptures tell you will be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. So who were you sold to? Because that's your enemy. It says they had returned battle hardened and ready to stand up for equal rights and for themselves. It says this meant that in some cities, for the first time, Black people fought back against the brutality, notably in Chicago and Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., where riots saw both Black and white people killed, albeit still mostly Black. In Chicago, 23 Black people and 15 white people died after a Black teenager, Eugene Williams, drifted on his raft into a whites-only section of Lake Michigan. He drowned when a white man, George Stober, threw rocks at him, knocking him unconscious. It says, despite several witnesses, a white police officer refused to arrest Stuber. It says, Black people protested. Reacting to that, white mobs swarmed through the city, shooting at and torching buildings as they went. Still, the police did nothing. So Black veterans organized to defend their neighborhoods. The riots lasted a week, and alongside 38 deaths, 537 people were injured, and an estimated 1,000 to 2,000 lost their homes. And this is going to happen again. This is going to happen again. I'm going to read this. It says, ignored and forgotten because of shame. It says, and yet few people know about any of this. This is relatively little reference. There is relatively little reference to it in the mainstream or any other media, nor in any school curriculum. This is probably because the greatest shame was how the press and authorities reacted. In the UK, the British government, still with a huge multi-ethnic empire, intensified its repatriation repatriation scheme. It moved colonial citizens to avoid a black backlash, offering a resettlement allowance between 1919 and 1921, and it's an estimated 3,000 black and Arab seamen and their families were deported under the scheme. You see, aren't they ramping up deportation right now too? It says in the U.S., black residents, black residents was politicized. It says it was leapt on by the federal government in the press as being Marxist and pro-Soviet. This being just 2 years after the Russian Revolution, black rights movements were labeled Bolshevik. Sound familiar? You see, these are these devils. Look at them. Look at how happy they are. Unfazed. You got a Jake just burning in front of them. You devils, man. And these are the same fucking spirits back, man. Look, he's so concerned about the nigga, he trying to make sure he's in the picture. You Edomites, bro. You Edomites. It says, look, says Will Brown, victim of Omaha, Nebraska lynching, the charred corpse of Will Brown after being killed, mutilated, and burned September 28, 1919, University of Washington. Did any of these devils come up on charges? They're in the picture. Obviously part of the crime. It says just about every mainstream newspaper, including other supposedly liberal titles such as the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, spun the line Black Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks. The Times ran the headline: Reds try to steer Negroes to revolts. You see, and they just spun it so that it'd be justified. Let me get this. Zechariah 1 and 14. So the angel that communed with me said unto me, Cry thou, saying, Thus said Yahweh of hosts, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great jealousy, and I'm sore displeased with the heathen. Peep this. Look at these heathen, right? The Lord is sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. For I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. You see what this? This is forwarding the affliction. Fire so hot, it's just leaping through this poor Jake's neck. It says, Therefore, thus said Yahweh, I am returned to Jerusalem with mercies. My house shall be built in it, said Yahweh of hosts, and a line shall be stretched forth upon Jerusalem. So the Lord is returned. We got the name back. You devils is in big fucking trouble. We got the name of who the world is going to know as Alashadya, a great demon-like power, man. The Lord said when he comes, he's not going to meet you devils as a man. We got that name back. It says this was part and due to the federal briefings to the press. The state was determined to ignore racial inequalities and heap the blame on socialists. Oh man, there's a scripture that goes with that. Here it is. This is Psalm 73. Salakia. 1 second, Akia. Salakia. Psalm 73 and 4. It says, For there is no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. This is talking about these Edomites. The wicked, man. You so-called white people. That's that white privilege. Neither are they plagued like other men. White privilege, right? It says, verse 6, therefore pride compassed them about as a chain, violence covered them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than the heart could wish. They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression, right? They use the newspaper and they have briefings with the press. The government have briefings with the press of how to label you Jake. It says the Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer reported to Congress on the anarchists of Bolshevik threat and accused black community leaders of an ill-governed reaction toward race rioting. The riots also coincided with the beginning of J. Edgar Hoover's notorious career. He blamed the Washington riots on numerous assaults committed by Negroes upon white women. Wow. It says, despite an absence of evidence in the Elaine massacre on the allegation of a Negro, of the agitation in a Negro lodge, he also initiated the investigation of Negro activists. You see, the same shit that they're doing now with Trump, right? He went on social media and say, hey, identify these Jakes. They were trying to pull down them statues. These are the same events going on. Same events. And you Jake is going to get swept away in it. It says, while there were most certainly leftist elements at play, the resistance was without question a defensive reaction to years of unpunished violence by white individuals and mobs. There was no gray area in all this. No very fine people on both sides. Yet, only one major report by Dr. George Hayes, a black civil servant and academic in October 1919, recognized this, noting lynchings as a national problem and connecting it to the riots. You see, this is a bad article. I'm gonna stop on that, man. I'm gonna get uh one more scripture, man. I'm gonna get one more scripture. I'll get two more scriptures, man. This is Mark 13. And I'll close it out on these two, man. I'm gonna put this article too in the description of this because this is a bad article, bro. It says Mark 13 in Slovakia. Mark 13 and 8. You know what? I'll start at 6. It says, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am a Mashiach, and shall deceive many. And these are the signs of the end. Verse 7, it says, and when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. It says, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and that's what we're seeing. Jake is rising against Esau. Jake's not going to come all together, man. The only way you're going to come together is coming under Yahweh Bashim Shai. You have to be under one doctrine. That's why the scriptures say, can two walk together except they be agreed? If there's one disagreement, man, it's going to break apart. You know, so Jake's not really going to come together, but Jake is going to recognize that these Edomites and these other nations are their enemy. It says, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. This is talking about those race wars, and there should be earthquakes in diverse places, and there should be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows, and this is the beginning of sorrow. This is what we're seeing in the same instance. All this stuff is coming back. All of it's coming back, bro. Now this is Second Ezra 16, and I'll end it on this because just like in this time, this is what's about to happen. Second Ezra 16 and 70, it says, "For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection, which is they're going to be running up on you, man, upon those that fear the Lord." And who are the ones that fear the Lord? The Israelites. You Jake, you Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Esau's going to look at you as an enemy, and he's going to bring that insurrection, that great persecution. It says, verse 71, "They shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord." So these devils are going to come back in the same spirit, killing you niggas. If you're not right, you better get right, because this is about to happen again, man. If you don't have the protection of the Lord, you're going to fall just like this Jake here, man. And you're going to be a part of another postcard to be scoffed at by these devils. Look at him. Look at that smile. Look at that demonic ass smile, man. So, Lord willing us to edify, I want to say, call halal, Yahweh, Bashim Al Shai, Bashim Krakadash, double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and mercy to hopeful elect. Get ready for another red summer. Shalom.